Okay. Well, I want to welcome everybody to this presentation. Nancy Winters and I are going to present our research on the OER that we implemented into one of our BSN courses. So I will begin with, let me bring up the presentation here. Here we go. Okay. All right. So the title of our presentation of our research is a comparative analysis of an open educational resource textbook and a traditional textbook on student outcomes in an online nursing course. So a little bit of a history here. So I think it was like towards the end of 2017, I went to an OER informational session that the library was offering, and they brought up all the benefits of open education and resources and things. So I thought, well, maybe I'll write a book for transitions to professional nursing practice, Nursing 300. So I started that process, and as I was talking with Cheryl about it, she thought it would be a great idea to see, look at the outcomes and see how it compares from the traditional textbook to this textbook. So that was the beginning of this idea, and I got in touch with Nancy, and we came up with this idea to create this research study. So, so the book started probably around 2018, and I finished, and it was posted in 2019 in the class in the summer for the first session. So, all right, let me see. It's not progressing here. Why is it not going? Here we go. Okay, so I'll give you a little bit of background on OER. Was that the first slide? No, this was the first slide. Okay, so first I'll start with a little bit of background on the textbooks. So as you may know, textbook costs have increased significantly over the years, 82% between the, 2002 and 2012, with students paying up to $1,200 a year for textbooks. I mean, just thinking about the ADN program, they begin with like $1,500 for their nursing textbooks, which doesn't even cover all their other courses. So it's a significant amount of money. And many students don't even purchase their textbook. So we've got 66% is huge, which 37% leads to a poor grade. So the need for a textbook that was free or low cost would be helpful in getting students to really have the access to the resources. And so some background on the OERs. They're easier to access than traditional. Most often they are available right in the classroom on the first day of class. They certainly can be printed, but the students do have access right away. Multiple research studies find that the quality is either equal or better than traditional textbooks. One survey found that 83% of students reported that the OER was very supportive of their needs to do their coursework. And many of them, 78%, would recommend it. And students often even request courses with OERs. They look for those courses, and they are listed as OER courses in the course catalog. Saves students a lot of money. In this one study, $760,000. And we'll go into the cost savings for this course. And grades are unchanged using OERs. Again, there's multiple studies on that as well. So this is just one snapshot of that. So with the high cost of textbooks and the research that shows OERs, students are interested in OERs, perceptions are positive. I thought that it would be a good idea to implement our first OER into the program. So the purpose of our research, due to limited outcomes in OER for nursing education, we thought, especially online, we want to determine the learning gains between a teacher-developed OER and a traditional commercial textbook. So what's different about, what is unique about this OER that I wrote was it was written specifically for this course, versus some OERs you can you adopt from an OER repository and then create it to fit your course. But this was written exactly for the course topics. So this is just a little snapshot. This is the textbook that I wrote, and this is the Hood textbook that many of us are familiar with. So, and then Nancy will take over the methods section.
Alrighty, so we initially had this fantastic research design plans. We were going to have a quasi-experimental pre-test, post-test design in order to be able to measure knowledge gain between these two groups. However, as is becoming a pretty common factor, after we opened up for the first semester, the first session of the study to start doing data collection, we only had one student that agreed to participate. So we had to rapidly make some design changes and get IRB approval changes and all of that. And we revised to a retrospective grade analysis design. So for the sample, the initial data cleaning identified that 2 students had some missing data for actually more than half of the coursework. So these 2 students had obviously dropped the course without actually withdrawing. So the decision was made to delete them from the sample. So the total sample was 160 nursing students that we collected and analyzed data for. Of those, 78 were enrolled in courses that utilized the traditional textbook, and 82 were from the strictly OER courses. So that is 48.8% and 51.2% respectively. Of these groups, 3 instructors taught the sections of courses, with 57 being taught by the first instructor, 61 by the second instructor, and 42 by the third instructor. And there was really no statistically significant difference in the numbers of students that were taught between these instructors and between the OER and the textbook groups. Next slide. Okay, so we originally had 5 research questions, but 2 involved measuring knowledge gain using this pre-test, post-test design that I had described earlier. However, again, due to that lack of student participation, we cut them down to just 3 questions, which could be analyzed using that retrospective data. The first is that, is there a difference in assignment grades between a course that uses the traditional commercial textbook and a course that uses OER exclusively? And our hypothesis was that there would be no statistically significant difference in these 2 groups' grades. The second was, is there a statistically significant difference in online class discussion grades between these 2 groups? And our hypothesis was that there would be no statistically significant difference. And the third question was, is there a difference in final grades between these 2 groups with similar hypothesis? Next slide, please. So retrospective data was analyzed for all students enrolled in NURS 300 during the spring, summer, and fall of 2019. And then we did our data analysis over winter break. So we just really completed all that in January. Student names were not tagged to the grades, so that no data was linked in any way to student identifiable information. We analyzed data in SPSS using descriptive statistics and bivariate analysis using independent samples t-tests. For assignment 1, it's a written paper on professional role development. And Jamie, if I end up saying the wrong names for these assignments, you just jump right in there. But it's a written paper on professional role development. One outlier was identified, and this one student was in the traditional group, and that student had received a 0 for this assignment for non-completion. So this data point was removed during analysis, which then revealed a normal distribution. After removing the 0, the min-max for the grades for this particular assignment was 62 to 100, with a mean of 86.85. The mean score for the traditional textbook group was 88.04, which was 77 students, and which was slightly higher than the OER group that had a mean of 85.73 with 82 students. An independent samples t-test was completed and found no statistically significant difference between those two scores, and that p-value was 0.08. So meaning that although on that one particular assignment, the mean score for the traditional group was slightly higher, it wasn't at a statistically significant level. For assignment 2, scores less than 45 were identified as extreme outliers. So one student in the traditional group fit that criteria for extended lateness with this assignment submission, and therefore we deleted that particular student from the data analysis. So data from 159 students were analyzed for that particular assignment with a min-max of 45 to 100 for grades. The statistical analysis revealed a statistically significant difference with a p-value of 0.04 between the mean assignment scores for the students in the OER and the traditional textbook group. The OER group had a mean score of 89.46, and the textbook group had a mean score of 85.70. So the OER group, you see the mean score is higher than the textbook group, and it was at a statistically significant level. The Cohen's d, which tells us the strength of that, how strong that difference is really with a 0.33, we would say that that's a small to a medium effect size. So it's important to note that the 3 lowest grades for this assignment were 45, 55, and 55. And they were all among students in the OER group. So the lowest grade for students in the traditional group was 59.75. So you would think that this is really kind of great that this assignment was found to be statistically significant, because the OER group had such low scores that we would have thought that would pull that mean score down statistically, and it still had a statistically higher mean score. For assignment number 3, normal distribution was created on the Q-to-Q plot by filtering out students with scores ranging 0 to 55. This accounted for one traditional student that achieved a low score of a 55, and that was for lateness. After removing that one outlier, the min-max was 65 to 100 for this assignment, and the analysis revealed no statistically significant difference between the two groups, and that p-value was 0.24. The OER scores were slightly higher than the traditional textbook group, but again, remember, it was not statistically different. A second analysis was performed without removing the data from that one traditional student with that low score that I mentioned prior, and that further revealed no statistically significant difference with a p-value of 0.14. Next slide, please. Great. So in this particular course, there is 4 weeks of graded discussions. The first discussion, no outliers were identified. There was a normal distribution, and the min-max ranged from 57 to 100 for those grades. The mean score was 86.85. The mean score for the traditional textbook group was 91.27, which was slightly lower than the OER group, which was 92.89, but again, not at a statistically significant level, which was found to be P of 0.24. The second discussion revealed several low grades with min-maxes ranging from 39 to 100 with a mean of 90. So the 2 lowest scores for both groups were actually identical, of 39 and 42. So the decision was made to keep them in the analysis since they were identical for each group. The mean score for the traditional textbook group was 88.97, which was slightly lower than the OER group at 91.16, but not at a statistically significant difference of p of 0.23. For discussion 3, there were 2 outlier scores among the grades of students in the traditional textbook group who had received a 32 and a 34. These low grades were due to lateness and lack of participation, and the decision was made to remove them from the analysis. The independent samples t-test found no statistically significant difference when they were removed from the analysis, with a min-max of 64 to 100 with a mean score of 92.96. And the p-value for that particular analysis was 0.13. For the final discussion, 1 student in each group received a 0 for non-completion. The decision was made to remove those 2 students from the analysis, leaving 158 students being analyzed. After removing the outliers, the min-max ranged from 65 to 100, and the statistical analysis revealed no statistically significant difference with a p of 0.92 between the groups. The mean for the OER group was 96.06, and the traditional textbook group was 95.95. While slightly higher, it was not at a statistical significant difference. Next slide, please. Final grades ranged from 63 to 99 across all sections, with a mean grade of 89.68. 1 student in the traditional group received a 63, and that was identified as an outlier. All student grades remained in the analysis, though, so the N was 160. So the independent samples t-test revealed no statistically significant difference, p of 0.22, between the mean assignment scores for the OER group, which had a mean of 90.28, and the traditional textbook group with a mean of 89.04. The OER scores were slightly higher than those of the traditional textbook group. A second analysis was performed without removing the data from that 1 traditional student, with removing it, and which still revealed that there was no statistical significant difference, and that p was 0.22, with a mean of 90.28 for the OER group and an 89.04 for the traditional group. Next slide, please. So analysis found statistically significant differences in mean scores for 1 of 3 assignments in the course, as described before. That p-value is 0.04, with a small to medium effect size. The OER scores were significantly higher than the traditional textbook group for that particular assignment. But it's important to point out that for the remaining assignments, there was no statistically significant difference in the assignment grades. However, the mean scores of all but 1 assignment were slightly higher for the OER group, which we typically, like if this was nursing research, we would call that clinical significance over statistical significance. So, I used the word educational significance here. So it's not a significant value, but it is important to note that it was slightly higher. So this study provides evidence that OER can be implemented into nursing online courses without adverse effects on grades received by the students. Next slide, please. So this study addressed the gap in knowledge related to outcomes when using OER in online nursing education courses. And based on the results that we presented here, the use of OER offered similar learning outcomes between this teacher-developed OER that Jamie made and the commercial textbook. And she previously mentioned the benefits, but I'll just remind you that the OER content can be instantly available in the course when the student accesses the course on the first day, and that it's free of charge, which does help to save money for these students. And next slide, please. And these are our references. And does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I had one question just earlier in the slide in the presentation. So I just know, from the few years that I've been teaching that you have a difference just overall sometimes in the cohort that you have. Like the cohort that I'm teaching right now is, quite a bit different than the cohort I had in spring K or in spring J. So just wondering if that was something that you guys looked at in going into this, if there was any difference in the overall GPA of the students between the different cohorts.
No, we didn't look at GPAs. Yeah.
We actually originally did, because part of our demographic data included that. But as I mentioned in the presentation, we only had the one student that agreed to participate, which we couldn't get any demographic data, and doing it as a retrospective analysis, we weren't connecting the data to any students. So unfortunately, we don't have that data.
Okay, thanks, just wondering.
Yeah, we were also going to be looking at if students received any grants, like state grants, Pell grants, things like that, to see if that had any impact as well. We had all kinds of demographics, so it would have been very interesting had we had some participation. We also had tried to get we've talked about getting some funding together to give them some, like, a $10 gift card or something, but thinking of the big picture of all of these students who would have needed many thousands of dollars, so $1,000 or whatever. So whether or not that would have incentivized students to participate, I don't know, but yeah.
I appreciate your study, and I wanted to say that I like that Nancy brought up also about the statistical significance. Although your study had statistical significance, sometimes students think that if they don't have it, the study is worthless, and that's not true. There is still clinical significance. So I'm glad you brought that up. A great study.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question for you, ladies, about the vehicle itself, the OER. Do you have any idea how many students might have printed out sections of it, or did they fully use it online? Because I think there are differences in terms of usage if there's a physical textbook versus an e-textbook. Maybe that's a follow-up piece of your study or something like that if you don't have that data. But do you have any information about that?
The one thing I can tell from numbers is I can look on, first for the digital, I can look at the SUNY textbook site and see how many times the book is downloaded, but that's just a number. I don't know who has downloaded it or from their student. I can certainly contact the bookstore and see if anybody has purchased it through the bookstore. It's also sold on Amazon, but even with that, I mean, I bought my copy on Amazon, so I wouldn't know. So it's
what is the cost on Amazon?
$15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if someone wants, they can use the resource for free through the class.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when they use it through the course, they can use it through some links, or they can just go right out to the SUNY website and access it there.
I'm asking because in some studies that I've read about the use of e-textbooks, that students have said that they actually use their textbooks more when they're something physical that they can take with them. They're sitting in different places. Some of them read them online. In the supermarket, they're more comfortable where you can also read it on a tablet in the supermarket online too. But some people are still more comfortable with that physical book. And I wonder if that influences the usage, and if that had any, it could be just, I don't know if it's a limitation, but it could be something that when you write this up, that you might want to mention is a factor in terms of
that was originally in our demographic data.
Yes,
I remember that.
One of
I
the
remember
points
when I reviewed your study.
How did you access it for their post-test? It was one of the questions, but unfortunately, we don't have that data.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, this was really a great thing to see the difference in the grades. I mean, that was really,
I have a question. I'm sorry, Cheryl.
No, it's okay.
One of the things I've wondered has been with the dual degrees, because the dual degrees that would have been in the Nurse 300 cohort for your study would have experienced OER in the Nurse 101 course.
Right.
And the very first year I had OER in Nurse 101, I had better outcomes in that course than I've ever had. The second year, I couldn't say the same. So I don't know what the difference was. But it's been interesting to follow them from 101 on over into 300, knowing that they both had an experience before they hit the 300.
Right.
So
Right.
just something to think about.
Yeah. Right.
I may have missed this, but when you looked at the 3 different sessions, were they all the same 3 instructors that were teaching each session?
Yes.
Okay. So we all know from when we do blind reviews that even though we have grading rubrics, there's still variability between instructors who are teaching the same course. So did you look at all the instructor and for each of the different assignments and their grades and compare them? So just look at the instructors themselves.
Yes, yes, that was done as part of the analysis, and there was no difference, no statistically. I think on one assignment there was a statistically significant difference in the grading, but it didn't impact the grade, the results in any way.
Thank you.
That's a good point, though, Marguerite. We did try to make sure that we did have the same faculty throughout all of the sessions under study. That was our plan.
Yeah, and that the dual, I think it was Londa asked the dual degree question. That was another point in our demographic data, and we could actually go back and do some data mining to retrospectively look at that also. But it would have been much easier, of course, if it was answered in a demographic sheet.
Yeah.
Fortunately,
Yeah.
we don't have that though.
Right. Yeah. So we were happy to know that the gains were similar. Like we said, it didn't have to be significant. Just that it was just as good. Gave them the information that they needed.
You know what's interesting? That these results, I didn't think about this before because I'd known about your results before, but I was just thinking that your results mirror the kind of results they get from simulation learning.
Right.
Where the studies show that the outcomes of using simulation are not better or not worse. They're pretty much the same as going into clinical environments, justifying the use of simulation for at least a chunk of clinicals. And this is very similar. That, I mean, you had the significance of the grades being higher, but when you looked at the assignments themselves and the outcomes, you just had that one assignment that, had a little bit different. And that was probably the annotated bib, even though it's a 300 level, when you look at it compared to the paper, it's an easier assignment. It's a lower level assignment than the theory paper was. So you have to look at that, each assignment in itself as well as the level of difficulty.
Right.
But, it's interesting how it's kind of similar to the sim study.
And that annotated bib doesn't use that much of the course resources.
Exactly.
Right. It's just a role information. Yeah, there was, so
exactly.
that lines right up. So, yeah.
Way to go, ladies.
Yeah. And
Thank
it was,
you all for coming.
yeah.
Did a nice job.
Thank you.
Very nice job. Thank you.
What's your next plan? What's your next step in this research plan now?
Well, actually, that was a conversation I was going to have with you and come up with some ideas, actually.
Happy to have that conversation.
Yeah. I mean, this actually stemmed from your idea when I was telling you about my idea to bring this into the course. So, yeah, I'm ready for another one. So.
Great. I kind of feel like in the program in general, when we do something different, we should just think about on the, and Nancy's probably smiling about this, but when we do something different, automatically think in your head, how can I measure this? And what will the impact be on the program? Just like these alternative practicums that we're doing now.
Right.
If we're doing them, we might as well get something out of it and in terms of data and see what it means so that we can look at it, going forward. So I think it's really worthwhile to do this.
Yeah.
And there's that big, I had to go off camera for 2 minutes. I had a phone call, but I don't know if you mentioned that huge grant remember we heard about that huge grant? Was it out in Wisconsin or
In
where is
Wisconsin.
it that they got like giant amounts of money to
Millions,
develop
yes.
millions, to
Yes.
develop, and here, Nancy and I are asking for a measly 50,000 between two grants, and
I
these
know.
jokers are getting millions,
I know.
for developing nursing OERs,
Right,
so.
right. Yeah, for the associate level where it is needed for costly books, so.
Yeah,
I mean, I personally think it's something that we really need to be really thinking hard about for our program, because especially in a time when there's such competition between programs, if there's anything that we can do to make our program stand out better, financial gain, financial is always a huge thing on students' mind. How much is it going to cost me to go to school? Even for me, who I'm just finishing my umpteenth degree in 2 more weeks, I also was like, oh, do I really want to do this? It's so expensive for those books. And, it's something that I even thought of. And, I think if we can teach using readily available material that doesn't cost anything, we should be doing it.
Right.
I'm a believer, I can tell you that, because with the on-ground students, they don't buy books. They won't. And they especially will not buy a book for a 7-week course. They are just like, that's not worth it.
No.
And they don't have the resources. We have so many students who show up and can't afford books, can't even afford food, and we're asking them to buy $1,000 worth of books in the first semester. We're constantly strategizing how to get access to them. So I know, it was a hard sell the very first time I used OER, because they just felt lost. And then when I showed them how easily it is, if you're really bent on printing it out, it's not that hard. And, they figured it out pretty quickly. So anyway, I am a believer, but I am continuously shocked by what I hear from my coworkers, as far as I feel sorry for the editors, or I feel sorry for the publishers. And I'm like, are you kidding? I don't understand that piece of it. So I think it's definitely taking time, but the more we can promote good results like this, Jamie, I think the better.
Yeah, that it's been my goal to kind of try to promote our programs as X% OER, like our new master's electives. There's no purchase, there's no textbook associated with them. So, I think as courses need to replace a textbook, get in touch with me and I will look at all the repositories and see if we can pull things together. And I will be creating over the summer an OER resource page in Confluence. So there's going to be a lot of resources available for you to find all open materials, from images to resources to pedagogy.
Wow, that'd be excellent.
Etc. Yeah.
Great.
So.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, I appreciate everybody taking the time out to listen to Nancy and our presentation. So
Thanks so
What
much.
other classes is the OER being used in right now? I know that Hood used to be moved forward to a few classes. Do you know if it's being used in other classes now?
In 302, I'm not using a textbook anymore. I'm using articles.
No articles. No, but I meant Jamie's OER. Is the OER from 300 being used in other courses?
Well, I know, like in the past, it has been kept right on the syllabi for other courses, and the word had gone out that we're not using Hood anymore. But I haven't heard from anybody that people are accessing this. I do monitor the downloads. I only see them change in the beginning of the sessions, if that tells you anything at all, but I can certainly reiterate. I mean, this content is it's really very basic and broad. I'm not sure how applicable it is for when Hood was being used, 3/4 of that book wasn't used in our course. So that content very well might have been used in those other courses.
Right. That book was like
Yeah.
a real basic BSN book, you know,
Right, right.
professional practice book.
Sure, sure.
Right.
But if half the students weren't purchasing it to begin with,
Right.
you know.
And, you know, when Hood originally developed that book, there was nothing, there was no literature
Right.
that talked about transitions. And now you can find articles on transitions everywhere that,
Right.
you know, you don't really need it anymore.
Right. Right. Well, thank you. I have to run. I'm sorry, but really, ladies, great job.
Yeah. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming.
Thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks. Have a good rest of your day. Okay.
All right, bye Jamie.
Bye. I guess I have to stop the recording here.